three small figures stacked on top of each other, trembling beside the train tracks. That was the moment Grizz, Panda, and Ice Bear chose to become brothers, not because the world welcomed them, but because they had no one else. From that first panicked stack to the quiet cave in the Bay Area forest, this is the entire We Bare Bears timeline, a journey through friendship, rejection, and the fight to belong somewhere without losing each other. In this documentary, we'll follow every step of their story. The cub years wandering alone, the awkward attempts at fitting into human society, the viral fame disasters, and the final chase that forced them to run for their right to stay together. Whether you remember the train tracks or only know the cave, this film will guide you through every mistake, every friendship, and every moment they refuse to unstack. So how did three lost cubs end up as the most controversial bears in San Francisco? The whole thing kicks off with three bears living in a cave just outside San Francisco, which already sounds like the setup to a joke. You've got Grizz, the oldest, big, optimistic, basically the guy who thinks every problem can be solved with enthusiasm and a can-do attitude. Then there's Panda, the middle brother with a jean jacket and anxiety levels that could power a small city. He's glued to his phone, desperately wants to fit in, and has the social skills of someone who learned about friendship from anime. And Ice Bear, the youngest, who refers to himself in third person and might be the most competent person in the entire show despite saying approximately 5 words per episode. These three don't just live together, they move together, literally stacked on top of each other like some kind of adorable totem pole. It's their signature move, and honestly, it shouldn't work, but it does. Their first real adventure into the city is basically them trying to get burritos. That's it, that's the goal. But because this is their life, a simple food run turns into them accidentally joining a basketball game, nearly destroying a food truck, and somehow making friends with the owner anyway. The bear stack makes its grand debut here when they need to reach something on a high shelf, and you realize this is going to be a thing. Grizz on bottom for strength, Panda in the middle for moral support, and Ice Bear on top doing all the actual work. They're trying to blend into human society, which is tough when you're three literal bears, but their earnest enthusiasm makes people just kind of accept it. By the end, they've got their burritos, they've made a connection, and you get the sense that this cave life might actually work out for them. Next up, Panda discovers the internet, which is either the best or worst thing that could happen to him. The jury's still out. He's scrolling through videos when he stumbles onto this koala named Nom Nom, who's ridiculously famous for just being cute. Panda gets it in his head that if Nom can be internet famous, why can't three bears? So naturally they try to make their own viral video. It goes about as well as you'd expect. They attempt every trend they can find. Dance challenges, pranks, lip syncs, and fail spectacularly at all of them. But here's where Panda's phone obsession really starts. He's constantly checking his notifications, refreshing his follower count, and getting genuinely devastated when things don't blow up. The video that finally goes semi-viral is just them being themselves, doing the bear stack to rescue a cat from a tree, but by that point, Panda's already spiraling about engagement metrics. This episode sets up two major things: Panda's relationship with technology, and the fact that Nom Nom exists in their universe as this unreachable celebrity. Remember that. It becomes important. The bears meet Chloe, and honestly, she's a game changer. She's this genius kid, like legitimate child prodigy, taking college courses, who spots them at the library and just decides they're friends now. No hesitation, no fear, just pure confidence that three bears would obviously want to help her with her homework. Grizz is immediately on board because he loves making friends. Panda's suspicious because he's suspicious of everything. And Ice Bear just starts tutoring her in advanced mathematics without saying much. The chemistry is instant. Chloe treats them like regular people, which is exactly what they want. And they treat her like the brilliant weird kid she is. She becomes their connection to the human world in a way that feels genuine, not as a pet owner or a spectacle, but as someone who sees them as individuals. By the end of the episode, they're study buddies, and you get the sense this is going to be a recurring thing. The way she casually accepts Ice Bear's third-person speech, pattern, and Panda's anxiety spirals makes her feel like the little sister they didn't know they needed. Then Grizz gets the bright idea to start a food truck business, because of course he does. The bear who can barely navigate a grocery store without incident thinks he can run a mobile restaurant. Ice Bear, who actually can cook, is quietly doing all the work while Grizz is out front being the face of the operation and making promises they absolutely cannot keep. Panda's handling social media marketing, which means he's just posting pictures of the food with increasingly desperate captions trying to get people to notice them. Their first day is a disaster. Orders pile up, the griddle catches fire, Grizz accidentally gives someone a burrito filled with napkins. But Ice Bear's cooking is legitimately good, so people keep coming back despite the chaos. This episode reveals Ice Bear's hidden talent and sets up this pattern where Grizz's optimism gets them into situations that Ice Bear's competence has to get them out of. The food truck doesn't last, but it's a solid attempt at fitting into human society, and honestly, the fact that they got permits at all is impressive. After that comes Panda's dating app phase, and I genuinely cannot blame him for trying, but also, wow, is this painful to watch. He creates a profile with the most generic interests possible: long walks, good conversations, someone who likes burritos. His profile picture is a selfie where you can barely see him because of the angle. He matches with someone who seems perfect. They agree to meet up, and Panda spends the entire day catastrophizing about how it's going to go wrong. Spoiler, it goes wrong, but not for the reasons he thinks. His date is actually cool with him being a bear. That's not the issue. The issue is Panda's so in his own head about being awkward that he becomes actively awkward, doing that thing where you narrate your own anxiety and make it worse. Ice Bear and Grizz try to help by spying on the date from nearby tables, which obviously backfires when they're spotted and have to pretend they're not related. The date ends with mutual "let's be friends" energy, and Panda's heartbroken even though it was objectively not that bad. This establishes his pattern of self-sabotage in relationships, which becomes a running thread throughout the series. The grocery store episode is where you really see them trying to exist as normal citizens. They need food, they have money, they go shopping. Simple, right? Except they've never done this before as a group, and their shopping styles are wildly different. Grizz is grabbing everything that looks good, with no plan. Panda's taking aesthetic photos of produce for his feed instead of actually shopping. And Ice Bear is efficiently moving through with a list and coupons. They accidentally start a shopping cart race in the aisles, nearly destroy a display of cans, and somehow end up helping an elderly woman reach items on high shelves using the bear stack. The store manager is about to throw them out until they inadvertently stop a shoplifter by just being in the way at the right moment. It's pure slapstick, but it shows their dynamic: Grizz's enthusiasm, Panda's distraction, Ice Bear's competence, and how those three traits somehow balance out into functional chaos. There's this moment early on where they reference Ice Bear's past, just a throwaway line about his time in the tundra, and it's easy to miss, but it plants a seed. Ice Bear's watching a documentary about the Arctic and gets this look not sad exactly, but distant. Grizz asks if he misses it, and Ice Bear just says, "Ice Bear remembers the cold," which tells you nothing and everything at the same time. This is the first hint that Ice Bear has a whole backstory we're not seeing yet. The other two don't push it, and the moment passes, but now you're wondering what exactly happened before they became brothers. Keep that in mind, it pays off way later. And then Nom Nom enters their lives properly, and oh boy, does this koala have main character energy. They meet him at a promotional event where he's taking photos with fans, and Grizz is genuinely starstruck. He approaches Nom Nom like they're going to be best friends, completely missing all the signs that Nom Nom is deeply self-absorbed and only cares about his image. Nom Nom sees the bears and immediately calculates how he can use them for content. 3 bears doing the stack is visually interesting, it'll get engagement. So he's nice to them just long enough to get footage, then ditches them the second the cameras are off. Grizz is crushed. Panda saw it coming. Ice Bear's already moved on. This sets up Nom Nom as this recurring presence, not quite a villain, but definitely an antagonist who represents everything shallow about internet fame. The rivalry between Grizz and Nom Nom specifically is fascinating because Grizz just wants to be friends, and Nom Nom only understands relationships as transactional. Something goes wrong at the cave, a pipe bursts, or there's a structural issue, the details are messy, and suddenly they're dealing with an actual emergency that requires them to work together under pressure. This is where you see the brother dynamic crystallize. Grizz takes charge, but makes decisions based on optimism, rather than practicality. Panda panics and needs constant reassurance that they're not all going to die. Ice Bear just starts fixing things methodically, while providing calm commentary like Ice Bear has seen worse. They're arguing the whole time about whose fault this is and what they should do, but they never stop working together. The stack comes into play when they need to reach a shutoff valve, and this time, it's not played for laughs, it's actually the solution. By the time they've patched things up enough to be safe, they're exhausted and covered in mud, but they're also more confident in each other. That night, they're sitting around their fixed cave, and Grizz says something corny about how they make a good team. And for once, Panda doesn't contradict him. The stack malfunctions for the first time, and it's both hilarious and kind of scary. They're trying to use it for something routine, changing a light bulb maybe, and Ice Bear sneezes. Just a regular sneeze, but he's on top, and Panda's in the middle, and suddenly the whole structure is wobbling. They crash into furniture, knock over a lamp, and end up in a heap on the floor, with Grizz on bottom going, "I'm okay, everyone okay," while clearly not okay. It forces them to actually think about how the stack works, instead of just assuming it will. They practice different formations. Ice Bear suggests they rotate positions based on the task. Panda wants to implement hand signals. Grizz thinks they just need to feel it. They workshop it like a sports team working on plays, which is absurd, but also kind of sweet. By the end, they've got a system that's slightly more reliable, and the stack becomes less of a gag and more of a tool they consciously choose to use. This episode cements the stack as their signature move and shows them learning to coordinate as a unit. The next stretch of episodes really fills out their world. They meet Ranger Tabes, who patrols the park near their cave, and has strong "I've seen some stuff" energy. She's initially suspicious of 3 bears living unsupervised, but after they help her track down some teenagers causing trouble, she decides they're alright. Tabes has this whole conspiracy theorist vibe. She's got a corkboard with red string in her ranger station connecting random forest incidents to cryptids and government cover-ups. The bears humor her theories mostly, except when she's actually right about something, which happens more often than you'd think. She becomes this unexpected ally who can help them navigate bureaucracy and official channels, because she knows how the system works, even if she doesn't always trust it. There's an episode where she's convinced Bigfoot is real and recruits the bears to help her prove it, which is funny for obvious reasons. Because yeah, they meet Charlie, and Charlie is Bigfoot, or a Bigfoot. The show never really clarifies if he's the Bigfoot or one of many. He's living in the woods, lonely and kind of sad, and when the bears stumble onto him, they're initially freaked out, but then they're like, we're also weird creatures trying to fit in. This is fine actually. Charlie's backstory is heartbreaking in that quiet way the show does so well. He's been alone for years because people either don't believe in him or are scared of him, and he just wants friends. The bears accept him immediately. No questions, no conditions, just "you're weird, we're weird, welcome to the family." Charlie becomes this recurring presence who shows up when they need help or when he needs help, and there's never any transactional energy to it. It's just friendship. The episode ends with them teaching Charlie how to take a selfie for Panda's feed, and Charlie's so happy about being included that it's genuinely touching. This found family energy is what makes the show work. Panda gets his jean jacket, and this might seem like a minor thing, but it becomes part of his identity. They're at a thrift store and he finds this vintage jacket that fits him perfectly, and suddenly he feels cool. Like genuinely confident for the first time in a while. He starts wearing it everywhere, and it becomes his thing. You see Panda, you see the jean jacket. There's this nice moment where Grizz tells him he looks good and Panda actually believes him. It's a small character beat, but it matters because Panda struggles so much with self-image and fitting in, and this jacket becomes his armor. Later episodes reference it constantly. It gets damaged and he panics, someone compliments it and he glows, he lets Chloe borrow it once and treats it like he's lending her a family heirloom. A visual shorthand done right. They do a flashback episode about young Grizz, and oh man, does this explain a lot. He was performing at a traveling carnival as a cub, doing tricks for crowds. The carnival life was rough, long hours, repetitive shows, living in a cage between performances. But there was this one kid who came to every show and genuinely loved watching Grizz perform. Not in a look at the dancing bear way, but in a way that saw Grizz as talented and special. That relationship, brief as it was, taught Grizz that optimism and enthusiasm can create genuine connections even in bad situations. It's why he's always trying to make friends, why he assumes the best in people, why he thinks every disaster can be turned into an opportunity. The carnival eventually shut down, and Grizz ended up alone, but that core lesson stuck. The episode ends with present-day Grizz making pancakes for his brothers and humming the same tune he used to perform to, and it recontextualizes his entire personality as a conscious choice to stay positive despite everything. Ice Bear's fighting skills get revealed when someone threatens them and Ice Bear just handles it. Like effortlessly. He moves like someone with serious training, using precise strikes and defensive maneuvers that are way more advanced than Bear swipes at threat. Afterward, Grizz and Panda are like, "Where did you learn that?" And Ice Bear just says, Ice Bear had a different childhood, which explains nothing. This is when the Miami Vice references start. Ice Bear will occasionally drop a line in a gravelly voice about the old days or the city, and you're not sure if he's quoting the show or referencing his actual past. So it becomes a running gag that might not be a gag at all. His competence is played for comedy, but there's always this undercurrent that Ice Bear has genuine skills from a mysterious backstory, and the show just lets that sit there unresolved for a while, building intrigue. Panda meets Lucy at the library, and this is different from his dating app disasters. Lucy is a fellow bear and artist, quiet, kind of in her own world. She drops her books, Panda helps her pick them up, their paws touch, and you can actually see him fall in love in real time. It's painfully sincere. They start hanging out working on art projects together, and for once Panda's not spiraling about every interaction. Lucy gets him in a way that other people don't. She understands the outsider feeling, the creative drive, the desire to be seen. There's this lovely montage of them spending time together, and Panda's smiling more than we've ever seen. Of course, it gets complicated later, but this introduction establishes Lucy as someone important to Panda's emotional development. She's not just a crush, she's the first person outside his brothers who makes him feel understood. The personality swap episode is absolute chaos in the best way. They try this experimental juice cleanse that's supposed to realign their inner bears, or something equally ridiculous, and instead it somehow makes them act like each other. Grizz becomes anxious and phone-obsessed, Panda gets hyperactive and optimistic, and Ice Bear won't stop talking in first person about his feelings. It's hilarious because the voice actors are clearly having fun, but it also demonstrates what each character brings to the dynamic by showing what happens when those traits are gone. Anxious Grizz can't lead, peppy Panda can't be the voice of reason, and chatty Ice Bear can't be the reliable foundation. They're stumbling over each other trying to function until the cleanse wears off and they snap back to normal, immediately falling into their usual rhythm. The episode ends with them agreeing to never do that again and Grizz saying, "I like us the way we are," which is maybe the thesis statement of the entire show. The holiday special has them attempting Christmas despite not really understanding Christmas. They've seen it in movies and on TV, so they know there's supposed to be a tree and presents and togetherness, but the execution is all wrong. They get a tree that's way too big for the cave. They make presents for each other that are completely impractical. They try to cook a feast and nearly burn everything, but the heart is there. They're trying to create a tradition together because that's what families do. Chloe stops by and gently helps them course, correct without making them feel bad about getting it wrong. By the end, they're sitting around their wonky tree with mismatched decorations, eating slightly burnt food, and it actually feels like Christmas because they're together. The cultural misunderstandings are played for gentle humor, never mean-spirited, and it reinforces that these three are building their own version of family traditions from scratch. Panda tries to get into the art scene, and his insecurity is working overtime. He creates this piece he's actually proud of, mixed media, personal, kind of vulnerable. He submits it to a local gallery show and gets accepted, which should be a pure win. But instead he spirals about whether it's good enough, whether people will get it, whether he's a fraud. The night of the show, he's physically there but emotionally checked out, already defending himself against criticism that hasn't happened yet, and then people actually like it. They engage with it, they ask him questions about his process, they see what he was trying to express. One person even wants to buy it. Panda's so shocked he almost says no. This is a big moment for him, external validation that he's actually talented, not just delusional. But the episode doesn't end with him suddenly confident, it ends with him calling Grizz and Ice Bear to share the news, and their pride in him matters more than any stranger's approval. Character growth in small, realistic increments. There's an episode about hibernation that's just absurd from the premise up. It's getting cold and their bear instincts are telling them they should be sleeping through winter, but they live in San Francisco and have lives now, they can't just disappear for 4 months. So they try to fight the biological urge to hibernate, which goes about as well as you'd expect. They're downing coffee, blasting loud music, taking cold showers, anything to stay awake, but their bodies are shutting down anyway. Grizz falls asleep mid-sentence. Panda's eyes close while he's scrolling on his phone. Ice Bear makes it the longest but eventually just lies down on the kitchen floor and accepts his fate. They end up compromising, sleeping in shifts so someone's always awake to handle important stuff, which defeats the purpose, but at least they're trying. It's a silly episode that plays with the tension between what they are biologically and what they want to be socially, and the resolution is very on brand. They find a workaround that's inefficient but keeps them together. The season wraps with an emotional beat that reaffirms their bond. Something threatens their cave-living situation, maybe a permit issue, maybe a natural disaster scare, and suddenly the possibility that they might have to separate becomes real. Grizz tries to stay positive, but you can tell he's terrified of being alone again. Panda goes full anxiety spiral imagining worst-case scenarios. Ice Bear quietly starts preparing for the worst while saying, Ice Bear will adapt, but there's a heaviness to it. They have this conversation where they lay out what being brothers means to them, which is rare because usually their affection is shown through actions rather than words. Grizz talks about how they're the only family he's ever really had. Panda admits he doesn't think he could make it without them. Ice Bear says, Ice Bear chooses this, which is the most vulnerable he's been. The threat gets resolved, they find a solution or someone helps them or the problem was overblown. But that conversation lingers. They've acknowledged out loud that this relationship is chosen and precious, and now we know they know it too. That's the foundation everything else builds on. Season 2 kicks off with a noticeable shift in energy. The world feels a bit bigger now, and the stakes have a little more weight, even though the show's still fundamentally a comedy. The recurring characters are back, and they're not just one-off appearances anymore. There's continuity building. Chloe's checking in regularly. Ranger Tabes is treating them like unofficial park deputies, and Charlie's showing up more often. The bears have settled into a rhythm with city life, but that just means there are new and exciting ways for things to go wrong. Nom Nom makes his big comeback, and the rivalry with Grizz intensifies in that uniquely petty way. Nom Nom's internet fame has only grown. He's got brand deals, a verified account, millions of followers who hang on his every post. Meanwhile, the bears are still struggling to get their videos past double digits in views. Nom Nom accidentally runs into them at various events and makes sure to flex his celebrity status every time. He'll be like, oh, you guys are still trying the whole viral thing? That's so cute. Grizz tries to stay friendly because he genuinely doesn't understand that Nom Nom actively dislikes him, while Panda and Ice Bear see exactly what's happening and are just waiting for Grizz to catch up. There's this fantastic moment where Nom Nom stages a spontaneous meet up with the bears for his followers, acts like they're best friends for the camera. Then the second filming stops, he tells them to get out of his shot. Grizz finally realizes Nom Nom isn't a friend, and honestly, it's a little heartbreaking watching him process that not everyone can be won over with enthusiasm. The viral video sequel situation is peak, trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. They had that one semi-successful video way back, so naturally they think they can replicate it. They spend an entire day setting up the exact same scenario, same location, same bear stack formation, even trying to find the same cat to rescue from the same tree. But it doesn't work because viral moments aren't manufactured, they're lightning strikes. The video gets like 30 views, most of which are probably from Chloe watching it multiple times to be supportive. Panda's devastated because he'd already planned what he'd do with internet fame. The collaborations, the sponsorships, the validation. Grizz tries to cheer him up by saying they don't need to be internet famous to be happy, which is objectively true, but doesn't help. Ice Bear's just relieved they can stop performing for an invisible audience and go back to living their lives. The episode's a good reality check about chasing fame versus just existing, and it plants the seed that maybe Panda's relationship with social media isn't entirely healthy. Panda launches his own channel, and if you thought his quest for viral fame was intense before, now he's fully committed. He's posting daily vlogs about bear life, cooking videos with Ice Bear, prank attempts on Grizz that never land, tours of the cave, raiding burritos from different food trucks. The content is actually kind of charming in a low-budget, earnest way, but the algorithm isn't interested. He's stuck at the same subscriber count for weeks, and you can watch him slowly lose his mind checking his analytics. He starts planning content based on what he thinks will perform rather than what he wants to make, which sucks all the joy out of it. There's this sad moment where he's editing footage at 3 in the morning and Grizz asks if he's having fun, and Panda can't actually answer. The channel becomes a running element throughout the season. Sometimes it's a tool for episodes, sometimes it's a source of anxiety, but it's always there representing Panda's desperate need for external validation. Ice Bear gets a solo episode where Grizz and Panda are out of the picture for whatever reason. Maybe sick, maybe dealing with their own crisis, and we just follow Ice Bear through his day. And here's the thing, Ice Bear is wildly competent when he's alone. He wakes up, does an extensive workout routine that includes handstand push-ups and axe throwing, makes himself a nutritionally balanced breakfast, and then just goes about his business. He fixes broken appliances around the cave, does the grocery shopping with military efficiency, even stops a minor crime in progress without breaking a sweat. All of this in near silence with occasional third-person commentary. The episode demonstrates that Ice Bear could probably survive just fine on his own. He's got skills, discipline, and resources. But there's something lonely about watching him go through his day without his brothers, and when they get back he visibly relaxes. Competence doesn't equal happiness, and Ice Bear chooses to be part of this chaotic family even though he'd probably have an easier life solo. Grizz's hero complex gets an entire episode dedicated to it, and it's both funny and kind of concerning. He sees someone in minor trouble, a kid's balloon stuck in a tree, maybe, and his brain goes straight to, I must save the day, but his execution is always several steps too extra. He doesn't just get the balloon, he creates an elaborate pulley system that partially destroys the tree and scares the kid. Someone mentions they need help moving furniture and Grizz shows up with a full moving truck and a team's Panda and Ice Bear. who did not agree to this. A woman can't find her phone and Grizz organizes a neighborhood-wide search party that lasts hours and involves tapes and her tracking equipment. The problem is that Grizz's need to be helpful often creates more chaos than the original problem, but he never learns because in his mind he's being a good friend and neighbor. The episode ends with someone gently telling him that sometimes people just need small help, not grand gestures, and Grizz nodding, but you can tell he didn't actually absorb the lesson. Character consistency done right. Chloe's doing a school science project and decides the bears are perfect research subjects, which they agree to because they love Chloe and also don't fully understand what they're signing up for. She's studying social dynamics and adaptation in non-traditional family units, which basically means she's watching them live their lives and taking notes. She sets up cameras in the cave, follows them around with a clipboard, asks them to explain their decision-making processes. It's like a nature documentary, but the subjects are aware they're being filmed and keep trying to act normal, which makes them act weird. Grizz plays up his leadership role. Panda gets self-conscious about being observed. Ice Bear ignores the cameras entirely. The project culminates in a science fair where Chloe presents her findings, that chosen families create their own structures for success, and the bears are sitting in the audience feeling oddly proud. Also, they're the only bears at a middle school science fair, which gets some looks. But Chloe's school is weirdly accepting at this point. They become regulars at a coffee shop, and this is where you see them really integrating into the neighborhood. There's a barista who knows their orders. Grizz gets something complicated with extra everything. Panda orders based on what looks good on Instagram. Ice Bear just wants black coffee. They've got a usual table. They start recognizing other regulars. It becomes part of their routine. This little slice of normalcy where they can just exist without incident. Well, mostly without incident. There's definitely an episode where Grizz accidentally starts a lat art competition and gets way too into it. But the coffee shop becomes a recurring location that signals they're not just living near the city, they're part of the community. The barista even defends them once when someone makes a comment about animals in a food establishment, which is a nice beat showing that acceptance goes both ways. Panda's phone breaks and his entire world falls apart, like he's non-functional without it. Can't navigate, can't communicate, can't document his life for social media. The repair shop says it'll take a few days and Panda genuinely considers just buying a new one, except they're expensive and he's a bear with limited income. So he has to cope without it, and watching him try is both funny and a little sad. He keeps reaching for his pocket out of habit. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. He misses a meetup with Lucy because he couldn't get the text. But he also has this accidental detox where he's more present with his brothers, actually looking at the world around him instead of through a screen. Ice Bear makes a joke about Ice Bear remembers life before phones, and Panda snaps back that Ice Bear is weird, but by the end of the week Panda's kind of appreciating the break. Then he gets his phone back and immediately falls back into old habits. But there's a seed planted that maybe he's a little too dependent on this thing. The bear stack fails in a new way. They're trying to reach something, Panda's balance is off, and they tumble. But this time it's not played for pure slapstick, there's an emotional undertone. They're frustrated with each other. Grizz is annoyed that Panda wasn't paying attention. Panda's defensive because he was paying attention, he just slipped. Ice Bear's quiet, which means he's probably irritated too but won't say it. They try the stack again and it fails again, and again. Suddenly, this thing that's supposed to be their signature move, the physical representation of their brotherhood, isn't working. It forces this conversation about trust and coordination and whether they're actually as in sync as they think they are. They workshop it, practice different formations, talk through timing, actually communicate instead of assuming. By the end, they've got the stack working again, and it's better than before because they've acknowledged that even good things require maintenance and effort. The first real brother conflict happens, and it's uncomfortable in the way real family fights are. The specific trigger doesn't matter as much as the fact that they're genuinely arguing, raised voices, hurt feelings, someone storming out. Maybe it's about how they're splitting resources, maybe about whose idea they should follow, but it escalates to the point where Grizz says something thoughtless and Panda fires back with something cutting and Ice Bear just leaves. They spend the episode separately trying to prove they're right, but everything's harder when they're not together. Grizz's plan fails without input. Panda's anxiety spikes without support. Ice Bear's just quietly disappointed in all of them. Eventually, they end up back at the cave at the same time. Nobody wants to apologize first, and there's this painful silence. Then something mundane happens. Maybe dinner needs cooking or there's a noise outside, and they just start working together on it without acknowledging the fight. The resolution isn't a big emotional conversation. It's them choosing to move forward together because being apart is worse than being mad at each other. The episode ends with them back to normal, the conflict dissolved but not forgotten, which feels very real. After all the chaos of trying to be internet famous and navigating friend drama, the bears start thinking maybe they need an upgrade from cave life. The apartment hunting episode is a beautiful disaster from start to finish. They've saved up some money from odd jobs and Ice Bear's occasional cooking gigs, so they figure why not see what's out there. The real estate agent they meet is trying so hard to be professional about showing apartments to 3 bears, but you can see the internal struggle on her face. The first place is way too small. They can barely fit through the door in stack formation. The second place is in a building with a strict no pets policy, and there's this awkward moment where they have to explain they're not pets, they're tenants. The third place is actually perfect, but the landlord takes one look at them and suddenly remembers it's already been rented. By the end, they're back at the cave, a little discouraged but also realizing that their weird underground home has personality and history that a generic apartment doesn't. Grizz tries to spin it positive. We've got character, and for once Panda agrees. The cave stays. Fashion becomes a thing when Panda decides they need to update their looks to fit in better. He's been scrolling through style blogs and is convinced that if they just dress right, people will take them more seriously. So they go shopping, which is already complicated when you're bears, and it gets worse when they can't agree on anything. Panda wants them all in streetwear, hoodies, sneakers, the whole aesthetic. Grizz is drawn to loud Hawaiian shirts and thinks they should lean into looking fun and approachable. Ice Bear tries on a leather jacket and somehow looks like he's about to star in an action movie. They end up with this mismatched fashion show situation where they're trying different combinations and none of it feels right. The episode's actually a nice metaphor for identity. They're trying to wear what they think people want to see instead of just being themselves. By the end, they've returned most of it, though Panda keeps a few pieces that actually make him happy rather than just Instagram-worthy. Ice Bear keeps the leather jacket. It becomes a thing. A food critic somehow hears about Ice Bear's cooking and wants to review him, which should be exciting, but instead triggers everyone's anxiety in different ways. Ice Bear's confident in his skills, but doesn't love the pressure. Grizz is trying to help by being the front of house personality and ends up being too much. Panda's attempting to manage the social media angle and stage everything for perfect photos, which slows down service. The critic shows up and it's immediately clear they're taking this very seriously. Notepad out, no small talk, examining every detail. Ice Bear prepares this elaborate multi-course meal that's genuinely impressive, but Grizz keeps interrupting to explain the dishes and Panda's flash photography is ruining the ambience. The critic's getting annoyed, Ice Bear's getting stressed, and the whole thing's spiraling. Finally, Ice Bear just asks his brothers to leave the room so he can work, which is harsh but necessary. The meal ends up being incredible and the review is glowing, but there's this tension afterward where Ice Bear had to choose his craft over keeping his brothers involved. They work it out. Grizz and Panda acknowledge they were making it about them instead of supporting Ice Bear. But it's a growing pain. Grizz takes an improv class because someone told him it would help with his social skills, which is funny because Grizz's social skills are already maxed out in terms of enthusiasm, if not effectiveness. The class is full of humans trying to break out of their shells, and then there's Grizz who has no shell and just wants to play. He's great at the yes and exercise because his natural mode is agreeing with everything and adding more. But when they do an exercise about being vulnerable, Grizz struggles because his default is to deflect with humor and optimism. The teacher pushes him to explore a real fear, and Grizz eventually talks about being alone again, going back to that carnival cage, losing his brothers. It gets real quiet. The class responds with this scene where they're all supporting him, which is the point of the exercise, but you can tell Grizz is genuinely affected. He processes his anxiety through comedy, which works until it doesn't. The episode ends with him performing in the class showcase and actually being pretty good, and his brothers are in the audience being embarrassingly supportive. Charlie needs help with a job interview, and the bears are determined to prepare him despite having no qualifications to do so. Charlie's been living off the land forever and has no resume, no references, no interview experience. They set up a mock interview in the cave with Grizz playing the interviewer, and it immediately goes off the rails. Charlie doesn't understand workplace small talk. When asked about his strengths, he says, "I can eat an entire deer," which is technically true but not the vibe. Panda tries to help him craft a narrative about his wilderness management experience and independent problem solving, but Charlie keeps being too honest about things like, "I talk to myself because there's no one else." Ice Bear teaches him the firm handshake and basic etiquette, which helps. The actual interview happens off-screen, but we see the aftermath. Charlie didn't get the job, but he also isn't devastated because he tried something new and his friends supported him. That's the real win. Later, they help him set up a small business doing forest tours for cryptid enthusiasts, which plays to his strengths and doesn't require lying on a resume. See, Tabes ropes them into helping her investigate a conspiracy theory, and this one actually has legs. She's been tracking weird incidents in the park, missing equipment, strange footprints, mysterious lights. She's convinced it's connected to some secret government program. The bears are skeptical but agree to help because Tabes has helped them plenty. They do stakeouts, document evidence, follow leads that go nowhere. Panda's treating it like a true crime podcast and documenting everything. Grizz is just happy to be part of a team mission. Ice Bear's the only one taking it seriously and actually analyzing the evidence. Turns out there is something going on, not government conspiracies, but a group of teenagers using the park for late-night activities they're not supposed to be doing. It's way more mundane than Tabes hoped, but she's still vindicated that something was actually happening. The bears help her handle it diplomatically, and Tabes gains respect for their investigative skills. She starts treating them more like partners than civilians after this, which opens up future episode possibilities. The first Baby Bears flashback episode hits, and oh man does this add depth to everything. We see them as cubs on a train, huddled together in a boxcar. They're tiny and alone and trying to figure out how they ended up together. This is where we learn they didn't start as brothers. They found each other. Young Grizz is already optimistic, but you can see it's partially defensive, a way to cope with abandonment. Young Panda's got this ratty scarf that's clearly precious to him, early version of his attachment to objects. Young Ice Bear is eerily quiet even by his standards, and there are hints he's already been through some stuff. The boxcar becomes their mobile home for a while, and we see them learning to work together out of necessity. When they first attempt the bear stack, it's clumsy and they fall, but they keep trying because they need it to survive, reaching food, staying warm, protecting each other. The episode cuts between past and present, drawing parallels to current situations. By the end, we understand that their brotherhood isn't biological or even accidental. It's something they built deliberately because they needed each other. The flashback ends before we see how they got from the train to San Francisco, which means there's more story to tell. Nom Nom pulls them into another scheme where he needs them for a publicity stunt but frames it as genuine collaboration. He's launching a new product line or app or something equally on brand, and he wants the bears in the promotional video because people love underdog stories. The bears are suspicious, Panda especially, but Grizz still has this small hope that maybe Nom Nom's changed. Spoiler, he hasn't. The video shoot is them doing humiliating stuff while Nom Nom looks cool and collected by comparison. They're literally props to make him look better. There's a scene where they're supposed to look impressed by Nom Nom's talent, and Panda just refuses to fake it anymore. He walks off set. Ice Bear follows because Ice Bear always follows when one of them makes a stand. Grizz stays because he committed to this, but you can see his heart's not in it. Eventually Grizz leaves too, and Nom Nom throws a fit about unprofessional behavior. The video comes out anyway using old footage, and it's clearly manipulated to make the bears look foolish. This cements Nom Nom as someone who will always choose his image over genuine relationships, and even Grizz is finally done trying. Lucy comes back into Panda's life right when he's gained a tiny bit of confidence from his art show success, which means he's only moderately anxious instead of completely spiraling. They run into each other at the same library where they met, and it's awkward but sweet. Lucy's been working on her own art and asks if Panda wants to collaborate on a project. He absolutely does, but he's terrified of messing it up. They start meeting regularly to work, and there's this they energy building. Panda's overthinking every interaction. Is this a date or just art colleagues hanging out? Ice Bear and Grizz are giving him conflicting advice. Grizz says just tell her how you feel. Ice Bear says Ice Bear suggests patience. Panda tries to manufacture a perfect moment to confess his feelings, but it backfires when Lucy realizes he's been building up to something and gets uncomfortable. She gently clarifies that she values their friendship and creative partnership but isn't looking for romance right now. Panda's heartbroken but tries to play it cool. The collaboration continues but it's strained. This is a more realistic take on unrequited feelings than the usual sitcom resolution, and it sets up ongoing tension between them. The bear stack saves the day in a new context when there's a legit emergency. A kid stuck somewhere or a fire that needs quick response, something that requires their unique combination of height and teamwork. This time the stack isn't played for laughs at all, it's genuinely heroic. They execute it perfectly, having learned from all their previous failures. Ice Bear's on top providing precise direction, Panda's in the middle managing coordination, and Grizz is the stable foundation keeping everyone grounded. They accomplish whatever needs doing, and afterward there's this crowd of people looking at them like they're heroes. It's the first time they're celebrated for being exactly who they are. Three bears who work together in weird ways that somehow succeed. The local news covers it, which thrills Panda's social media dreams and gives Grizz validation that they're genuinely helping people. Ice Bear's just satisfied they performed well under pressure. This episode reframes the stack from a quirky gag into something meaningful, a physical representation of their interdependence and trust. They have a conversation about belonging that hits different this time because it's not triggered by crisis. It's just them sitting around the cave on a regular night, thinking about their place in the world. Grizz wonders out loud if they'll always be outsiders or if someday they'll fully fit in. Panda says he's not sure he wants to fit in anymore, because fitting in means changing who they are. Ice Bear says Ice Bear is home, and gestures around at them, making it clear he's not talking about the cave, he's talking about his brothers. It's a quiet character moment that acknowledges they've grown from trying to be accepted to accepting themselves. They're still going to have adventures and chaos and struggles with the human world, but their foundation is solid. The scene ends with them just hanging out, comfortable silence, and you feel like they've reached a new level of contentment with their weird life. Continuing into the back half of Season 2, we get the deep dive into their childhood origin story through multiple flashback episodes. The Baby Bears arc picks up with them on that train, trying to figure out where they're going and what they're going to do. Young Grizz suggests they're on an adventure, trying to frame their abandonment as something exciting. Young Panda's the realist even then, pointing out they have no food and no plan. Young Ice Bear just starts organizing their limited supplies with impressive efficiency. So they're a mess of clashing personalities who haven't figured out how to work together yet. The train stops in various places and they have small adventures, stealing food from a picnic, hiding from adults who might separate them, sleeping in uncomfortable places. Each location teaches them something new about relying on each other, as the train becomes a metaphor for their journey together, moving forward uncertain destination, but at least they're not alone. Young Grizz's backstory gets fleshed out with his carnival origins. We see more of his performing life, the tricks he learned, the crowds that applauded, the cage he returned to after every show. There's this recurring image of young Grizz looking out through bars at a world he wants to be part of but can't reach. The kid who kept coming back to visit was named Travis, and he treated Grizz like a person, not a novelty. Travis would tell Grizz about his day, ask Grizz questions like his opinions mattered, sneak him treats. When the carnival shut down, Travis tried to convince his parents to take Grizz home, but they said no, he's a wild animal. Young Grizz heard this and internalized that his wildness was the problem, which is why present-day Grizz works so hard to be civilized and friendly and non-threatening. He learned that optimism and charm could make people forget what he was long enough to see who he was. It's honestly kind of heartbreaking, and it reframes every time Grizz has been rejected or used in the present day as him reliving that original abandonment. Young Panda's origin story involves rejection and anime, which tracks. We see him as a cub in what might be a research facility or a zoo somewhere sterile and lonely. He's obsessed with a TV he can see from his enclosure that plays anime shows, and he internalizes those stories about heroes finding their place and friendship conquering everything. When he's released or escapes, it's not entirely clear. He's carrying that ideology that if he just tries hard enough, he'll find where he belongs. But the real world isn't like anime. People are scared of him, or they infantilize him, or they want to capture him again. He gets rejected repeatedly, and each time it hardens him a little more while simultaneously making him more desperate for acceptance. The jean jacket and phone obsession in present day are extensions of this. Objects and aesthetics that signal belonging to a world that keeps pushing him out. His anxiety isn't just personality, it's learned behavior from repeated rejection. The flashback shows him finding the other baby bears on that train and for the first time experiencing actual acceptance without conditions. Young Ice Bear's backstory is the most mysterious and disturbing. We see him alone in a frozen wilderness, surviving through sheer competence at an age when he should barely be able to feed himself. There are implications, visual hints, but never explicit explanations, that Ice Bear was trained or experimented on somehow. He knows things a normal bear cub shouldn't know. It's advanced survival techniques, fighting forms, multiple languages. There's a scene where young Ice Bear takes down a threat with precise movements that look rehearsed, and afterward he just sits there looking small and tired. However, he ended up alone in the Arctic. It wasn't natural, and it wasn't kind. When he eventually makes his way south and finds the other baby bears, he's almost feral. Doesn't talk, doesn't trust, just observes. Grizz and Panda slowly bring him into their dynamic through persistence and genuine care, and you watch baby Ice Bear gradually start to engage. The first time he speaks, referring to himself in third person, Grizz and Panda just accept it as Ice Bear's thing. That acceptance is what allows him to stay. His present-day competence and emotional walls make so much more sense with this context. The How They Met episode is the emotional core of the entire flashback arc. We see the train pulling into a station, and the baby bears are trying to decide whether to stay together or split up to better their individual chances. Grizz wants to stay together because he's terrified of being alone again. Panda thinks they might find homes easier if they're not a package deal. Ice Bear doesn't voice an opinion, but you can see he's waiting to see what the others choose. They have this awkward attempt at saying goodbye, and none of them can do it. They keep finding reasons to delay. Just until we find food. Just until tomorrow. Just until the next town. Meanwhile, they're surviving through teamwork that's becoming increasingly natural. The bear stack happens accidentally when they need to reach something, and it just works. They're balancing each other literally and figuratively. By the end of the episode, they've made the implicit decision explicit. They're brothers now, chosen family, and they're sticking together no matter what. The episode ends with them leaving the train station together, destination unknown. But it doesn't matter because they have each other. Present-day parallels show them making a similar choice to stay together despite opportunities that might be easier pursued individually. Back in the present, there's an episode that deliberately mirrors a lesson from their past. Maybe they're facing a problem that requires trust or coordination, and one of them remembers how they solved something similar as cubs. The flashback isn't random nostalgia, it's them actively using their history as a guide. They talk about how far they've come from those scared baby bears on a train to who they are now. Still scared sometimes, still uncertain, but competent and together. The parallel structure lets us see their growth clearly. Baby Grizz's desperate optimism has matured into genuine leadership. Baby Panda's frantic need for acceptance has evolved into creative self-expression. Baby Ice Bear's survival instinct has transformed into protective competence. They've grown without losing their core selves, which is the best possible character development. Tabes gets her own backstory episode that explains why she's so paranoid and why she became a ranger. She grew up in the city, had a normal life, until she witnessed something in the forest that she couldn't explain, probably just a weird animal or natural phenomenon, but it shook her worldview. She became obsessed with the idea that there were hidden truths in the wilderness that official channels ignored or covered up. Becoming a park ranger gave her access and authority to investigate, while also letting her protect the natural spaces she'd come to love. Her conspiracy theories aren't just paranoia. They're a way of making sense of a world that surprised her once and could surprise her again. The bears fit into her worldview perfectly. They're impossible but real, which validates her belief that there's more out there. Her friendship with them is genuine, but it also gives her life meaning in a way her job alone doesn't. When she shares this with them, it deepens their relationship from helpful ranger to actual friend with her own struggles and needs. Chloe's family episode is delightfully awkward because her parents are lovely people who are also completely baffled by their daughter's friendship with three bears. They've heard about the bears, they've seen evidence of the bears, but actually sitting down for dinner with them is a different experience. Chloe's dad is trying so hard to be cool about it, asking work-appropriate questions like, "What do you do for a living?" when the answer is, "We're bears. We mostly scrounge." Chloe's mom is quietly concerned about safety while also being too polite to say anything. Chloe's mortified because she wants her family to love her friends and her friends to feel comfortable, and neither is happening naturally. The bears are on their best behavior, which somehow makes it worse. Grizz is aggressively friendly. Panda's using his phone to avoid conversation. Ice Bear's being even more silent than usual. By the end, there's a crisis minor household emergency, and the bears naturally help solve it using their unique skills. And Chloe's parents finally see what their daughter sees. Weird but dependable friends who genuinely care about her. It doesn't become perfectly comfortable, but it becomes acceptable, which is realistic for found family meeting biological family. Nom Nom gets a backstory hint that actually generates sympathy, despite him being terrible. There's a brief flashback or someone mentions his origin. He was rescued from a bad situation, became an internet sensation basically overnight, and got trapped in the need to maintain that fame because it's the only thing that's ever given him value. He's not naturally charismatic or talented. He's cute, and marketers figured out how to monetize that. The fame is hollow, but it's all he has, which is why he protects it so viciously and why he can't understand the bear's genuine friendship approach. This doesn't excuse his behavior, but it contextualizes it. He's a victim of viral culture who became a perpetrator of it. The episode doesn't redeem him. He's still selfish and manipulative, but it adds dimension. You understand that his rivalry with Grizz isn't just pettiness. It's existential threat. Grizz's authentic approach to friendship and life challenges everything Nom Nom's built himself on. The holiday special callback happens where they attempt the same holiday but with a year's experience behind them. This time, the tree's the right size, the presents are thoughtful instead of random, and the food is actually edible because Ice Bear's been practicing. But there's also a melancholy edge because they're aware of how much has changed. Chloe's a year older and slightly more mature. Charlie's more integrated into their life, but also dealing with his own struggles. Even Tabes shows up, which would have seemed impossible a year ago. They're building traditions, specific foods Ice Bear makes, specific decorations they've collected, specific ways they celebrate together. It's not about perfectly executing the holiday, it's about creating continuity. The episode ends with them watching their terrible first attempt on Panda's phone and laughing at how clueless they were, then making a new video to commemorate this year. You can see the growth in how they interact, how comfortable they are with each other, how their found family has solidified. Lucy makes a final appearance this season where she and Panda try to navigate post-rejection friendship, and it's uncomfortable for both of them. They care about each other, but there's this unresolved tension making everything weird. They try to work on art together and can't find their previous rhythm. Conversations feel forced. Eventually, Lucy addresses it directly. She values Panda's friendship but needs him to actually be her friend, not someone waiting for her to change her mind about romance. Panda has to make a real choice. Let go of the romantic possibility and be genuinely present as a friend, or step back entirely. He chooses friendship, which is mature growth for someone who usually spirals into anxiety. The episode ends with them working on art again, and this time it flows because Panda's not performing or waiting, he's just being present. It's not a happy ending so much as a realistic one, acknowledging that sometimes relationships change shape and that's okay. Lucy will appear less frequently going forward, allowing both of them to have necessary space. Season 2 ends with a major threat to their living situation. Maybe city inspectors, maybe the cave is structurally unsound, something that puts their home at genuine risk. The stakes are higher than previous conflicts because this isn't about individual problems, it's about their ability to stay together. Grizz tries every possible solution, calling in favors, researching regulations, even attempting to bribe officials with Ice Bear's cooking. Panda's having anxiety attacks about being displaced again, reliving his childhood rejection. Ice Bear's quietly preparing for the worst, packing their important belongings just in case. The resolution comes from an unexpected source. Maybe Tabes pulls some strings. Maybe the community they've been building relationships with rallies to support them. Maybe they find a legal loophole. They get to stay. But the episode ends with the acknowledgement that this won't be the last time their unusual living situation creates problems. They're living in a society that wasn't built for them, and they're constantly having to justify their existence. It's a more serious note than Season 1 ended on, reflecting that their world is expanding, and with that expansion comes new challenges that enthusiasm alone can't solve. Season 3 opens with the world feeling noticeably bigger. The bears aren't just navigating their immediate neighborhood anymore, they're dealing with citywide situations, and the consequences have more weight. There's this sense that they've established themselves enough that people know who they are, which is great until it isn't. The fire episode hits hard because it's the first time their home is in genuine, immediate danger. Something sparks a fire near the cave, maybe a camper's negligence, maybe electrical issues. The cause matters less than the response. The bears wake up to smoke and have seconds to decide what to do. Grizz wants to fight the fire, Panda's panicking about what to save, and Ice Bear's already assessing escape routes. They end up doing all 3 Ice Bear coordinates: evacuation of their most precious belongings, Panda documents everything for insurance purposes while having a breakdown, and Grizz literally fights the spreading flames with a fire extinguisher until Tabes and actual firefighters arrive. The cave survives, but it's damaged, and they have to temporarily relocate while repairs happen. Living in a motel for a few weeks tests their dynamic in new ways, sharing one room, no privacy, surrounded by humans who keep calling animal control despite Tabes vouching for them. The experience makes them appreciate what they have, but it also exposes how precarious their living situation really is. One fire, one complaint, one bureaucrat having a bad day, and they could lose everything. Nom Nom has a complete breakdown, and surprisingly, the bears are there for it. His fame machine collapses, maybe a scandal, maybe just the fickle nature of internet attention moving on to the next cute thing. He goes from millions of followers to rapidly declining relevance, and he cannot cope. He's having public meltdowns, posting desperate content, spiraling in real time on social media. It's uncomfortable to watch. The bears hear about it through Panda's feeds, and Grizz's immediate instinct is to help despite everything Nom Nom's done to them. Panda thinks they should let him crash and learn humility. Ice Bear's neutral but willing to follow Grizz's lead. They find Nom Nom in his mansion-like habitat, surrounded by sponsorship products and merchandise of his own face, completely alone and falling apart. They don't fix his problems, they can't restore his fame and wouldn't if they could, but they sit with him. They let him experience rock bottom with witnesses who won't exploit it. Grizz tries to explain that there's value beyond internet validation, and Nom Nom isn't ready to hear it, but a seed's planted. This isn't his redemption arc yet, just the beginning of him realizing his life is unsustainable. Panda gets an art show success that actually sticks this time. A gallery that showed his work before invites him back for a featured spot, not just a group show participation. This is legitimate recognition from the art community, and Panda's terrified he'll mess it up. He overthinks every piece, second guesses his style, almost pulls out entirely. Chloe talks him down by reminding him that his art is good specifically because it's personal and weird, and trying to make it palatable defeats the purpose. The show opens, and the response is genuinely positive, not viral famous positive, but respected in his niche positive, which might be more meaningful. Critics use words like outsider perspective and raw authenticity, which Panda isn't sure are compliments, but Grizz insists they are. He sells several pieces for actual money, enough that he can contribute more to household expenses and feel less like he's coasting on Grizz's optimism and Ice Bear's competence. More importantly, he's found an identity beyond Anxious Bear with phone. He's an artist, and people value what he creates. This confidence boost affects everything else he does going forward. Ice Bear's brother Yuri shows up, and this is where things get complicated. Yuri's a polar bear, bigger than Ice Bear, with heavy accent and even heavier history. He knew Ice Bear back in the old days, whatever that means, and their relationship is complicated in ways Ice Bear doesn't want to discuss with Grizz and Panda. Yuri's friendly enough on the surface, but there's tension underneath old resentments, different philosophies, maybe betrayal or abandonment. Ice Bear's suddenly withdrawn, which is saying something for someone already minimalist with communication. The episode reveals through context that Yuri and Ice Bear worked together on something dangerous and possibly illegal, and when things went wrong, they dealt with it differently. Yuri apparently stayed in that life while Ice Bear walked away to find something better. Now Yuri wants Ice Bear's help with one more job, and Ice Bear's refusing, and Grizz and Panda are caught in the middle trying to understand what's happening to their brother. The episode ends without full resolution. Yuri leaves but promises he'll be back, and Ice Bear finally tells his brothers a tiny bit about his past. Not everything, but enough that they understand he's been protecting them from something. Grizz's leadership gets tested when he makes a bad call that puts everyone at risk. Maybe he agrees to help someone without checking their motives, or he commits them to something that sounds good but is actually sketchy. For once, his optimism isn't just ineffective, it's actively harmful. People get hurt, not seriously, but enough that it's scary. Panda's furious because he saw this coming and said so, but Grizz overruled him. Ice Bear's disappointed, which is somehow worse than angry. Grizz has to sit with the fact that being positive and well-meaning isn't enough. He has actual responsibility as the oldest brother and the de facto leader. He apologizes, which is hard for him because he usually deflects with humor. He makes changes, starts consulting his brothers before making big decisions, thinks through consequences instead of just possibilities. It's character growth that costs something, which makes it feel earned. The episode doesn't paint Grizz as incompetent or bad, just someone learning that leadership is more than enthusiasm. Charlie's loneliness gets explored more deeply, and it hits different now that we've watched him integrate into the bear's life. There's an episode where Charlie's feeling left out, the bears are busy with their own stuff and haven't called him in weeks, which is understandable but hurts. Charlie has a crisis about whether he's actually part of their family or just a charity case they humor. He pulls back, stops reaching out, waits to see if they'll notice. They don't. Not immediately, because they're caught up in their own chaos. When they finally realize Charlie's been MIA and go looking for him, they find him deep in the woods, having fully retreated into isolation. There's this painful conversation where Charlie admits he thought their friendship meant more than it apparently does, and the bears have to reckon with the fact that they have each other to fall back on, but Charlie only has them. They genuinely didn't mean to hurt him, but impact matters more than intent. They make concrete changes, scheduled hangouts, including Charlie in planning, making sure he knows he's valued. It's a realistic portrayal of how found families require actual maintenance and attention. Lucy comes back one more time this season for closure on her and Panda's relationship trajectory. Enough time has passed that they've both processed the romantic rejection, and they can interact without constant awkwardness. They work on one final art collaboration, a joint piece that reflects both their styles, and it's actually beautiful. Through the creative process, they find a new equilibrium where they're genuine friends who appreciate each other's talents without the weight of unspoken feelings. The piece gets displayed at a local gallery, and both their names are on it, which feels like a mature way to honor what they had and what they've become. Lucy mentions she's moving not far, but far enough that they won't run into each other constantly, and Panda's okay with it. He's sad, but it's clean sadness without desperation. They hug goodbye and promise to stay in touch, in that way people do when they mean it, but also know life will probably pull them apart naturally. It's growth for Panda, learning that relationships can end without anyone being wrong, and that moving on doesn't mean what you had didn't matter. Tabes gets a new partner, another ranger who's way more by the book than she is, and she has to adjust to not being lone wolf anymore. Her new partner, Martinez, thinks Tabes is reckless and too attached to the bears. Tabes thinks Martinez is uptight and doesn't understand the complexity of the situation. They clash constantly until an incident where Tabes' unconventional methods and Martinez's procedural knowledge combine to solve a legitimate problem. After that, they develop grudging respect. Martinez never becomes fully comfortable with the bears living in a cave situation, but stops actively trying to report them, which is the best Tabes can hope for. The dynamic shift means the bears can't rely on Tabes to bend rules quite as much, which is another way Season 3 raises stakes. Their support systems are more complicated now. There's this meta episode where the baby bear's story gets optioned as a movie pitch, which is wild. Someone heard their tale 3 orphaned bears finding each other and thinks it's marketable. The present-day bears are invited to consult, which means watching Hollywood bastardize their childhood trauma into feel-good content. In the pitched version, Baby Grizz is too cutesy. Baby Panda talks about friendship in ways that sound like greeting cards, and Baby Ice Bear's mysterious competence is explained away with a generic, he's just special backstory. The bears are horrified, but also fascinated watching their lives get reinterpreted. There are callbacks to actual flashback episodes we've seen, but filtered through this commercial lens that strips out everything real. Eventually, they pull their support because the movie version isn't their truth, and the project dies. But it's an interesting commentary on how stories get told and retold, and how the bears' actual messy history matters more than a cleaned-up version ever could. It also progresses the baby bears narrative by showing how the present-day brothers now have enough distance to look back on their childhood with some perspective. The bear stack evolves again, with a new variation they develop for a specific purpose, maybe a rescue situation or a creative solution to an impossible problem. This time, instead of Grizz Panda Ice Bear vertical, they figure out horizontal formations, lateral movements, even a rotating stack that shouldn't work but somehow does. It's a callback to all the previous stack iterations we've seen while showing they're still innovating. The physical comedy's still there, but now there's genuine skill too. They've been doing this long enough that they can execute complex maneuvers most of the time. The new stack variation gets witnessed by a crowd and someone films it, and it goes semi-viral as a look at these bears moment. Panda's conflicted because he wanted viral fame for so long, but now that it's happening, it feels invasive. They're being watched and judged by strangers who don't know them. It's not the validation he thought he wanted. The season's building toward a major change with increasing tension. City officials are paying more attention to their situation. There are more concerned citizens calling about the bears. Bureaucracy's closing in despite Tabes' best efforts to run interference. The bears can feel something coming but don't know what or when, just that their equilibrium is getting disrupted. The stack mishap that causes injury is the tipping point someone gets hurt, not badly but publicly, and suddenly there's liability. Someone's kid was filming when Grizz lost his balance, and they tumbled into a street vendor's cart. The kid's fine, the vendor's merchandise is damaged, and Grizz is apologizing profusely while Panda's already catastrophizing about lawsuits. Ice Bear's assessing the actual damage with his usual calm. They settle things directly with the vendor. Ice Bear cooks a bunch of replacement food. Panda helps rebuild the cart using his art skills. Grizz's genuine remorse wins the vendor over. But the video's out there now, and it's not cute, it's scary. 3 bears losing control in a public space. The comments are split between "they're dangerous" and "they didn't mean it," and neither response feels good. This is the setup for everything that comes next. By the time they leave San Francisco for a trip episode, There's this sense of needing to escape the pressure building at home. They're visiting somewhere new, maybe a convention Panda wanted to attend, maybe helping Charlie with something in a different region, and suddenly they're fish out of water twice over. In San Francisco, they're known quantities. People might think they're weird, but they're familiar. In a new place, they're shocking all over again. Every interaction requires explanation. They can't rely on established relationships or community goodwill. It's exhausting, but also kind of freeing because they can try being different versions of themselves without history weighing them down. Ice Bear's past literally catches up when they run into someone from his Miami days. Not Yuri this time, but someone else who knew Ice Bear in whatever mysterious life he led before his brothers. This person seems friendly, mentions shared experiences in vague terms that sound both exciting and dangerous, and wants to reminisce. Ice Bear's actively uncomfortable, keeping conversations short, physically positioning himself between this person and his brothers. Grizz and Panda are picking up that something's wrong but don't want to push. Eventually, Ice Bear has to be direct. He tells this person Ice Bear left that life and asks them to respect it. The person does, but not before dropping hints about what Ice Bear walked away from. Organized crime, underground fighting circuits, intelligence work. The specifics stay vague, but the weight is clear. After they leave, Ice Bear gives his brothers the most information he's ever offered. He did things he's not proud of, survived situations that required him to be someone he didn't want to be, and meeting them gave him the chance to choose differently. Grizz and Panda don't need full details. They just need to know Ice Bear trusts them enough to share this much. The International Fans episode has Nom Nom showing up in their new location because he's trying to rebuild his brand with a world tour or something equally desperate. Seeing him outside his element is strange. He's less powerful without his home territory advantage. He crosses paths with the bears, and there's this awkward moment where both parties are surprised. Nom Nom's initially hostile out of habit, but he's also kind of relieved to see familiar faces, even if they're not friends. They end up in the same place at the same time, dealing with the same problem, maybe lost luggage, maybe a canceled event, and they work together out of necessity. It's not heartwarming cooperation, it's pragmatic. Nom Nom's still selfish and difficult, but there's a tiny crack in his armor where he almost admits he's lonely. Grizz reaches out with an invitation to hang out sometime. No cameras. And Nom Nom doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no either. Progress is incremental. Grizz runs into someone from his carnival days, a human who worked there during the same era. This person remembers Grizz and is genuinely happy to see him thriving, which is nice, but they also remind Grizz of everything he's tried to forget about that time. The cramped cage, the repetitive performances, the way people looked at him like a thing rather than a person. His friend asks about Travis the kid who visited, and Grizz admits he doesn't know what happened to him after the carnival closed. They part ways with promises to keep in touch that may or may not happen, and Grizz is quiet for the rest of the day. Panda tries to cheer him up, and Grizz does his usual deflection. But later that night, Ice Bear finds him looking at old photos they've collected over the years. Ice Bear just sits with him, not talking, until Grizz says, "I'm glad we're not alone anymore." Ice Bear responds, "Ice Bear also glad," and that's enough. Panda has an episode exploring his cultural identity that's handled with care. Maybe they visit a place with significant Asian population, or there's a cultural festival, and Panda's confronted with the heritage he's disconnected from. He's ethnically a panda, which carries specific cultural associations, but he was raised by circumstance with no connection to that history. He feels like a fraud trying to engage with it, but he also feels hollow without it. There's no easy resolution. He doesn't suddenly discover his roots and feel complete. Instead, he has conversations with people who share similar experiences of disconnection, and he realizes identity is something you build rather than something you inherit. By the end, he's still figuring it out, but he's more comfortable with the ambiguity. He buys a few items that feel meaningful, maybe art or books, and tells his brothers he wants to learn more over time. They support him without making a big deal of it, which is exactly what he needs. Returning home feels different this time. The city looks the same, but something shifted in how they see it. They notice the ways they've changed the neighborhood through their presence. The coffee shop has a photo of them on the wall. The food vendor they helped remembers them fondly. Kids recognize them and wave. But they also notice increased surveillance cameras, more frequent police patrols near the park, signs that the city's becoming more security conscious in ways that don't favor unusual residents like them. The cave is there waiting, but it feels more vulnerable now, like they're aware of how easily it could be taken away. There's a new neighbor situation where gentrification is lightly touched on new people moving into the area who have different expectations about what belongs and what doesn't. Someone complains about the bears to a neighborhood association. There's talk about maintaining property values and appropriate residence, coded language that Panda immediately recognizes as directed at them. They try to engage with the new neighbors, be friendly, and prove they're good members of the community. But some people are determined to be uncomfortable. One particularly difficult neighbor becomes a recurring antagonist, not evil but close-minded and wielding bureaucracy as a weapon. The bears realize they're fighting not just for their home but for the right to exist in a space that's becoming increasingly unwelcoming to anyone who doesn't fit a narrow definition of acceptable. Chloe's growing up is acknowledged explicitly when she hits a milestone, maybe graduation from one school level to another, maybe her first real job, something that marks time passing. She's still their friend, but she's also developing interests and relationships beyond them, which is healthy but also bittersweet. There's an episode where she's busy with her own life and can't hang out as much, and the bears have to adjust to her not being as available. They're proud of her growth, but also mourning the version of their friendship that's ending. When they tell her this, Chloe gets emotional because she's been worried about growing apart too. They establish new patterns that work for teenage Chloe versus child Chloe, less frequent but more intentional hangouts, different types of activities. It's a realistic portrayal of how relationships evolve with life stages. Charlie has his big moment where he saves the bears from a legitimate threat, proving his value in undeniable terms. Maybe it's a forest fire, maybe it's hostile humans, maybe it's a natural disaster. Whatever it is, requires Charlie's specific skills and knowledge. He doesn't just help, he's essential. In the aftermath, the bears thank him and he breaks down a little, admitting he's always felt like he needed them more than they needed him. They assure him that's not true, that friendship isn't transactional, that they love him regardless of usefulness. It's the explicit version of what's been implicit in their relationship. Charlie's not a charity case or a pity friend, he's genuine family. After this episode, Charlie's more comfortable asserting his needs and taking up space in their lives, less worried about being a burden. There's a recurring villain who escalates previous conflicts. Maybe it's the difficult neighbor, maybe it's a bureaucrat who's been making their lives hard, maybe it's someone with a personal grudge. This person's making their crusade to remove the bears from the neighborhood, gathering signatures, filing complaints, organizing meetings. The bears try everything. They attend community sessions and defend themselves. They get character references from friends. They even consult a lawyer to understand their rights. The legal situation is murky because they exist in a gray area the law wasn't designed for. They're not pets, but they're not human either. They pay taxes somehow, but don't have traditional employment. They've never been arrested, but they don't have conventional documentation. The system doesn't know what to do with them, and this villain is exploiting that uncertainty. The mid-season climax involves the brothers getting separated briefly. Maybe they're forced into different temporary housing. Maybe there's a misunderstanding with authorities. The specifics matter less than the emotional impact. For the first time since they were baby bears, they're not together. Grizz ends up with someone well-meaning but clueless about what he needs. Panda's placed somewhere that treats him like a pet. Ice Bear just disappears, probably to Tabe's place, or somewhere he feels safe. Each of them is miserable in different ways, dealing with their separation anxiety and lack of support system. They're not allowed to contact each other initially, which is torture. The episode cuts between their separate struggles and you feel the wrongness of them being apart. When they finally reunite through their own resourcefulness and possibly illegal means, the relief is palpable. They hold on to each other and make promises about never letting this happen again, even though they all know it might not be up to them. This separation reinforces everything about why they need each other and sets up the higher stakes going forward. The back half of Season 3 gets heavier as Nom Nom's redemption arc begins in earnest, though it's slower and messier than anyone expects. He reaches out to the bears asking for help with something that doesn't benefit him, someone else's problem that he could easily ignore. It's so out of character that they're immediately suspicious. Turns out he's trying to be better but has no idea how because his entire life has been transactional. He's like a person learning a language from scratch, stumbling through basic concepts of genuine friendship. The bears help him with whatever the problem is, and Nom Nom's visibly uncomfortable being in someone's debt with no way to leverage it. Grizz tries to explain that's not how this works. Sometimes you just help people because you can. Nom Nom doesn't get it yet, but he's trying, which is more than he's ever done before. This starts a pattern where Nom Nom shows up occasionally, awkwardly attempting connection, and the bears tolerate it because growth deserves encouragement even when it's painful to watch. There's a reality show parody episode that's both hilarious and uncomfortable. Someone pitches a show about the bears' daily lives, Real Bears of San Francisco, or something equally ridiculous. The premise sounds harmless, and the money would help with their legal expenses, so they agree. Immediately, they're trapped in manufactured drama. The producers keep setting up situations designed to create conflict, feeding them leading questions, editing their words to create narratives that don't exist. Grizz is portrayed as an incompetent leader, Panda as neurotic beyond function, Ice Bear as potentially dangerous. They watch the first episode and barely recognize themselves. What they thought was documentary is actually exploitation. They try to back out, but there's a contract with penalties. Ice Bear finds a loophole. If they're boring enough, the show will cancel itself. So they stop reacting, stop engaging, give the cameras nothing. It works, but it takes weeks of having their lives invaded before production gives up. The experience makes them way more cautious about how they're represented publicly. Ice Bear's cooking show episode is genuinely delightful after all that heaviness. A local access channel wants to feature him because his foods become semi-legendary in certain circles. This isn't exploitation, it's a straightforward cooking show where Ice Bear demonstrates recipes while providing deadpan commentary. Ice Bear begins with proper mise en place. Chaos in kitchen reflects chaos in soul. It's weirdly compelling television because Ice Bear's so competent and his instructions are actually useful. Grizz and Panda watch the taping and are amazed at how natural he is on camera when he's in control of the narrative. The show gets decent viewership in its time slot, and Ice Bear's asked back for more episodes. He agrees because he enjoys teaching, and the platform isn't corrupt. It becomes a recurring thing every few weeks. Ice Bear films another episode, and locally he develops a small but dedicated following who actually care about his cooking techniques rather than the novelty of a bear on TV. Grizz tries podcasting because he's watched Panda chase internet fame and figures maybe audio is his medium. His podcast is enthusiastic but unfocused. He interviews random people he meets, talks about whatever's on his mind, includes tangents about burrito rankings and philosophy. The production quality is terrible. Panda tries to help with editing, but Grizz's charm doesn't translate to solo audio format the way he thinks it will. He needs an audience to bounce off, and talking into a microphone alone doesn't give him that energy. The podcast gets maybe a dozen listeners, most of whom are people they know personally supporting out of obligation. Grizz keeps it up for a while out of stubbornness, but eventually admits it's not working. The failure's good for him though. It's a low-stakes way to learn that not every venture succeeds, and that his strengths lie in direct personal connection, rather than mediated communication. He pivots to doing volunteer work where he can actually interact with people face-to-face, which plays to his genuine talents. Panda's phone breaks permanently, and this time it can't be repaired, something fundamental is fried. He can't afford a new one immediately and has to go phoneless for an extended period. The withdrawal is intense at first. Phantom vibrations, constantly reaching for a device that's not there, anxiety about missing notifications. But then something shifts. He starts sketching more because he's not scrolling during downtime. He's more present in conversations because he's not simultaneously checking feeds. He notices details in his environment he's been missing. When he finally gets a replacement phone after a few weeks, he doesn't immediately restore all his apps and settings. He's more selective, keeping only what adds value. The obsessive checking doesn't return at the same level. It's not that he's cured of phone addiction, he's still Panda, he still loves documenting things, but he's developed a healthier relationship with technology through forced detox. This character growth sticks, making him more grounded in present-day interactions going forward. The final Baby Bears flashback shows how they got from that train to San Francisco specifically. They've been traveling for what must be months or years, growing from cubs to young bears, still together. They end up in the Bay Area somewhat randomly, maybe following another traveling show, maybe just drifting west until they hit the ocean. They discover the cave by accident when they need shelter from a storm. It's empty. It's hidden. It's theirs if they want it. Young Grizz says we could stay here, make this home. Young Panda's skeptical because every place they've stayed has eventually kicked them out. Young Ice Bear just starts making improvements, clearing debris, setting up bedding, securing the entrance. They choose San Francisco not because it's perfect, but because they're tired of running and this place seems possible. The flashback ends with them settling in for their first night in what will become their permanent home, and you understand their attachment to the cave isn't just about the physical space, it's about the moment they decided to stop moving and start building something. The parallel to present day, where they're fighting to keep that home, hits harder with this context. Tabe's conspiracy is proven right in the most vindicated way possible. One of her theories, something she's been tracking for years that everyone thought was paranoid nonsense, turns out to be completely accurate. Maybe it's corporate pollution being covered up, maybe it's illegal activity in the park. The specific conspiracy matters less than the fact that Tabes was right. She brings the evidence to her superiors, and they can't dismiss her anymore. The Bears help her document everything, using their unique perspectives and access to gather proof. When the story breaks, it's a whole thing. Local news, investigations, people finally taking Tabes seriously. She's vindicated, but also kind of disappointed because proving one conspiracy real means all her other theories seem less credible by comparison. People assume she got lucky once rather than being generally perceptive. Still, her reputation improves and she gets more authority to investigate future concerns. The Bears are proud of her and she acknowledges they were crucial to proving her case. This also demonstrates that the Bears have become genuinely useful community members who contribute in tangible ways. Lucy makes one last cameo where she and Panda run into each other completely by chance, and it's just easy. Enough time has passed that they're genuinely happy to see each other without any complicated feelings. They catch up briefly, she's doing well with her art, he's doing well with his. They're both in better places than when they last talked. There's no lingering romantic tension, just two people who shared something important and have both moved on. They part with genuine well wishes, and it feels like proper closure. This interaction demonstrates Panda's growth more than any dramatic moment could. He's comfortable with how things turned out. He can hold space for caring about someone without needing more from them. It's mature and healthy and kind of beautiful in its normalcy. Charlie's fully integrated into the friend group now, no longer questioning his place or waiting for permission to exist in their lives. There's an episode where they're planning something and Charlie just shows up and starts contributing ideas and nobody thinks twice about it. That's the marker of real acceptance, when inclusion is assumed rather than negotiated. Charlie even brings another friend around, someone he met through his cryptid tour business, and introduces them to the Bears naturally. He's building his own social network while maintaining his foundational friendship with them. It's healthy development that shows found families can expand without weakening core bonds. The stack mishap with actual consequences happens when they're helping with something community-related and someone gets minorly hurt, nothing serious, but a twisted ankle or bruised arm that requires medical attention. They feel terrible, immediately help the person, cover any costs, apologize profusely. The person's understanding and not mad, but the incident gets reported because medical professionals are mandatory reporters for certain things. Suddenly, there's documentation that 3 bears caused an injury, however, accidentally. This becomes ammunition for the people trying to force them out. The context doesn't matter to bureaucracy. There's an incident report, there's liability, there are risk management protocols to follow. The bear's intent is irrelevant next to the paper trail. This is when they realize good intentions aren't enough. They need actual legal protection and status that the system recognizes. The season finale setup makes it clear that big change is coming, and they can't avoid it anymore. All the small pressures have accumulated into an avalanche. The city wants to condemn their cave for safety reasons. Animal control has been fielding too many complaints to ignore. Their legal gray area is being forced into black and white, and they're on the wrong side. Tabes warns them that she's heard official discussions about relocation or institutionalization, not prison exactly, but some kind of managed situation that would separate them and control their lives. The bears have to make a choice, wait for the system to decide their fate, or take action themselves. The episode ends with them packing essentials, securing their cave, and preparing for something drastic. Grizz gives a speech about how they've never let anyone else determine who they get to be or where they belong. Panda's scared but resolute. Ice Bear says Ice Bear is ready for whatever comes, and you believe him because he's survived worse. They're not running away, they're fighting back, but strategically. The season ends with them standing together at the cave entrance, looking out at the city that's trying to reject them, unified and determined. You know Season 4 is going to be intense. Season 4 opens with a tonal shift that's immediately noticeable. Everything feels more urgent and the stakes are undeniably real. The mature but still fun balance tips toward dealing with actual systemic problems rather than episodic mishaps. The official investigation into their living situation is no longer theoretical. There are people with clipboards and authority actively documenting everything about how they live. Social workers, zoning inspectors, animal control officers, all well-meaning people just doing their jobs. But those jobs add up to scrutinizing every aspect of the bear's existence. They're interviewed separately, asked about their income sources, their food supply, their emergency protocols, their long-term plans. Every answer is written down and judged against standards designed for humans or captive animals, neither of which applies. The bears are trying to be cooperative because they have nothing to hide, but cooperation doesn't help when the system fundamentally doesn't have a category for what they are. Grizz tries to fix everything through sheer force of will and optimism, and predictably makes things worse. He organizes a community petition to let them stay, but half the signatures are from people who think they're signing something else. He attempts to get character witnesses, but chooses people who are themselves kind of questionable. Charlie's great, but also Bigfoot. Tabes is helpful, but has a reputation for conspiracy theories. He contacts every official he can find and pitches increasingly desperate solutions. What if they become park rangers? What if they're designated therapy animals? What if they start a legitimate business? None of these addresses the core issue that they're bears living unsupervised in a cave. His frantically positive energy is exhausting everyone, including himself, but he can't stop because stopping means accepting they might lose. Panda's anxiety reaches its most realistic portrayal, becoming less comedic and more genuinely concerning. He's having panic attacks, not sleeping, catastrophizing every conversation into confirmation that they're doomed. He withdraws from his art because he can't focus on creation when survival is uncertain. His social media presence becomes dark, vague posts about endings and displacement that worry his followers. Chloe notices and tries to help, but doesn't have the tools to manage someone else's mental health crisis. Eventually, Panda has a breakdown in front of his brothers where he just sobs about being tired of fighting to exist, tired of proving they deserve basic dignity, tired of being afraid. It's raw and uncomfortable, and Grizz doesn't try to positive talk him out of it. Ice Bear just holds him while he falls apart. The episode doesn't magically cure Panda's anxiety, but it does let him express how genuinely hard this is, which releases some pressure. Ice Bear becomes the emotional foundation holding everything together, which is both expected and beautiful. He's the one making sure they eat and sleep despite the stress. He's maintaining the cave even though they might lose it. He's researching their legal options with methodical precision. When Grizz and Panda are falling apart, Ice Bear provides the stability that lets them do so safely. There's an episode focused on Ice Bear's perspective where we see him processing everything, the threat to his home, his brother's pain, his own complex past with instability. He speaks more than usual, still in third person but with more vulnerability. Ice Bear has lost homes before. Ice Bear will not lose this one. His quiet strength isn't about lacking feelings. It's about having survived enough that he knows how to keep functioning through crisis. His brothers need him to be the rock, and he chooses to be that for them. But the episode makes clear it costs him something. Chloe testifies on their behalf at some kind of official hearing, and she's brilliant citing specific laws, presenting documented evidence of their positive community impact, making logical arguments about discrimination. She's grown into such a capable advocate, using her intelligence for something that matters. But she's also still young, and the adults in the room don't take her as seriously as they should because of her age. Her testimony helps but doesn't solve the problem, which is frustrating for everyone. Afterward, Chloe cries because she tried her best and it wasn't enough, and the bears have to comfort her while dealing with their own disappointment. It's a role reversal from when they first met. Now they're supporting her through failure instead of her supporting them through chaos. The relationship has matured into something more reciprocal. Nom Nom does something surprising by using his platform to help them. His fame has stabilized at a lower level, but he still has reach, and he makes a public statement supporting the bears. It's awkward and clearly uncomfortable for him. He's not good at sincerity, and you can hear him struggling with the wording. But he does it anyway, telling his followers that the bears are good people who deserve to exist in peace. He even shows up at the hearing to testify, which he absolutely didn't have to do. When asked why he's helping people who aren't his friends, he pauses and then says, "Maybe they could be, if I learn how." It's not a complete redemption, but it's genuine growth, and more importantly, it's him taking action that costs him something. His fan base is split on whether supporting literal bears is on brand or ridiculous, and he accepts that controversy to do the right thing. Grizz is moved to tears. Panda's shocked. Ice Bear nods slightly, which is high praise. Tabes goes full rogue, breaking actual rules to protect the bears because she's decided the system is wrong and she's not complying. She falsifies some paperwork, loses other documents, actively obstructs investigations she's supposed to be facilitating. It puts her job at risk, possibly her career, but she doesn't hesitate. When confronted by Martinez about her behavior, Tabes is unapologetic. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking bad rules, she says. And Martinez can't entirely argue even though procedurally Tabes is wrong. This is Tabes putting her friendship before her duty, making a concrete sacrifice that could cost her everything. The bears don't find out about most of what she's doing until later, and when they do, they're horrified she's risked so much for them. She just shrugs and says, "You'd do the same for me," which is true. Charlie rallies community support in unexpected ways by reaching out to other marginalized groups and outcasts who understand what it means to fight for the right to exist in spaces that don't want you. He connects with immigrant communities, unhoused populations, other weirdos who've been pushed out or pushed down by systems of power. They show up to support the bears not because they necessarily know them personally, but because they recognize shared struggle. There's a scene at a city council meeting where dozens of people testify on the bears' behalf, each telling their own story of discrimination and survival, drawing parallels to what the bears face. It's powerful and moving and demonstrates that this isn't just about three bears, it's about who gets to belong and under what conditions. Charlie's the one who organized this coalition, using his own experience of isolation and rejection to build solidarity. The cave becomes symbolic of something larger than just their home. It represents the possibility of existing outside traditional structures, of building family and community on your own terms, of claiming space without permission. The fight to keep it isn't just practical, it's ideological. If the bears lose their cave, it sends a message that deviation from normal is intolerable, that you must fit into prescribed categories or face erasure. Multiple episodes explore this theme through different angles. Property rights versus right to shelter, individual freedom versus collective safety, legal status versus moral consideration. The show doesn't provide easy answers, but it takes the questions seriously. The season builds to an impossible cliffhanger where the bears receive official notice. They must vacate within 30 days or face forced removal and separation. Forced separation is the threat that breaks them, because everything they've survived together. The notice specifies different facilities for each of them based on species and assessed needs: Grizz to one location, Panda to another, Ice Bear to a third. The system sees 3 individual bears requiring management, not a family that requires staying together. They have 30 days to find an alternative or accept separation. That night, they sit in their cave surrounded by years of accumulated life photos, art, Ice Bear's kitchen equipment, Panda's collections, Grizz's tchotchkes, and face the reality that they might actually lose this. They're not just scared, they're grieving preemptively. The episode ends with them looking at each other and making an unspoken decision. You don't hear what it is, but you know it's drastic. The camera pulls back from the cave entrance as night falls, and the season ends. The We Bare Bears movie starts with them on the run, and the stakes have never been higher. They didn't wait for forced separation, they left on their own terms. Now they're fugitives, which sounds dramatic, but that's functionally what they are. Bears who defied a legal order and disappeared. They've got a plan. Sort of get far enough away that San Francisco's jurisdiction doesn't matter. Find somewhere they can exist without constant threat. Prove they can make it work. But running is harder than anticipated. They can't use credit cards or normal identification without getting tracked. They're camping rough, moving constantly, and it's wearing on all of them. This is where the movie structure starts mirroring their baby bear's origin, but with adult complexity layered on top. The baby bear's parallel is deliberate and poignant. We see flashbacks to their boxcar journey interspersed with their current cross-country escape. Young bears with nothing but each other, learning to survive. Adult bears with accumulated life experience, still relying on each other for everything that matters. The visual parallels are striking: then and now huddled together for warmth, then and now stealing food, then and now wondering if they made the right choice, leaving safety behind. But there are differences too. Baby bears were moving toward possibility. Adult bears are moving away from persecution. Baby bears were discovering brotherhood. Adult bears are defending it. The intercut structure lets us see how far they've come and how some struggles remain constant. The cross-country journey is structured as episodic adventures under pressure, which keeps the movie from being one long downer. Each location brings new challenges and temporary allies. They help people along the way because that's who they are. They can't not help even when they're the ones needing help, and those small kindnesses come back around. A family they helped with car trouble lets them sleep in their barn. A kid they entertained at a rest stop doesn't tell authorities which direction they went. These moments are the movie's heart, demonstrating that community and kindness persist, even when systems fail. Each brother gets distinct character arc development within the larger story. Grizz has to learn that optimism alone isn't enough. He needs strategy, and sometimes he needs to accept things are genuinely bad before they can get better. His arc is about tempering hope with realism without losing the core of who he is. Panda's arc involves finding strength in vulnerability. He's always been the anxious one. But running for their freedom forces him to act despite fear, to contribute not by overcoming his anxiety, but by functioning alongside it. Ice Bear's arc is about opening up. He's been protective and closed off about his past, but survival requires his brothers understanding his skills and history so they can utilize them effectively. He shares more during this journey than he has in years, trusting them with pieces of himself he's kept locked away. Supporting cast cameos happen throughout the journey, people whose lives the bears touched showing up when needed most. Chloe video calls with legal research. Tabes provides intel about where authorities are searching. Charlie meets them at a rendezvous point with supplies. Even Lucy sends a message of support through Panda's limited social media access. Nom Nom uses his platform to shift public narrative, posting about the bears' situation in ways that make people question whether the pursuit is justified. Each cameo is brief but meaningful, demonstrating the network of care they've built. The villain escalation reveals the threat isn't one person but systemic. It's policies, regulations, protocols that don't account for beings like them. There are specific antagonists, a particularly zealous animal control officer, a bureaucrat who sees them as a problem to solve, but the real enemy is a system that categorizes and controls rather than adapting to complexity. The movie doesn't paint individuals as evil. It shows how people following rules can collectively create injustice. This makes the conflict more mature and harder to resolve because you can't defeat a mindset. The emotional core stays focused on brotherhood tested and reaffirmed. They fight during the journey. Stress brings out their worst sometimes. Grizz makes a leadership call. Panda disagrees with vehemently. Ice Bear hides information he thinks will worry them, which backfires when they find out and feel betrayed. These conflicts are real and painful, but they work through them because the alternative is unacceptable. There's a scene mid-movie where they're at their lowest point, exhausted and scared and wondering if they should just turn themselves in, and Ice Bear says, Ice Bear would rather die free than live separated. It's the most dramatic thing he's ever said, and it crystallizes what they're really fighting for. Not just physical freedom, but the right to remain together. Nom Nom's redemption completes during the movie's climax. The bears are cornered, legally and literally, and Nom Nom does something that costs him significantly. Maybe he confesses to something that takes heat off them. Maybe he uses his remaining fame as leverage. Maybe he just physically shows up and refuses to leave when authorities arrive. Whatever form it takes, Nom Nom chooses the bears over his self-interest in a way that can't be undone or taken back. Afterward, he's different, not perfect, still prickly and self-absorbed in some ways, but fundamentally changed by having people who matter more than his image. The bears accept him, not as a project or a charity case, but as someone who's earned genuine friendship through action. Ice Bear's past gets resolved through his confrontation with Yuri, who's somehow involved in the pursuit, maybe hired to track them, maybe trying to force Ice Bear back into old life. The specifics matter less than the emotional confrontation. They have it out, everything unspoken, every old wound, every betrayal and abandonment and choice that led them to opposite paths. Yuri represents Ice Bear's potential alternate life, skilled and dangerous but alone and hollow. Ice Bear tells Yuri he chose love over power, connection over capability, and he'd make that choice again. It's the most emotionally open Ice Bear's been, and it's all in service of defending his brothers and their right to exist together. Yuri backs down, maybe even helps at the end, recognizing that Ice Bear found something Yuri's still searching for. The climax involves both legal, social battle, and physical danger. They're fighting for legitimacy while literally defending themselves from capture. The community support Charlie organized pays off here. People show up, flood phone lines, protest decisions, make noise that can't be ignored. Chloe's legal research finds a precedent or loophole that provides technical grounds for their case. Tabes testifies truthfully about everything she's witnessed. putting her career fully on the line. The movie's smart enough not to solve everything with a courtroom speech, but it does show that collective action and solidarity can shift outcomes even within flawed systems. The resolution has the bears earning the right to stay, but changed by the journey. They're granted some kind of provisional status, not fully citizens, not pets, but recognized as autonomous beings with rights to family unity and self-determination. It's not perfect. They'll have to check in regularly, maintain certain standards, prove themselves in ongoing ways that human citizens don't. But they get to stay together and return home, which is what matters. The movie ends with them traveling back to San Francisco, tired but victorious, fundamentally altered by having fought for their right to exist. Post-movie life means adjusting to being known publicly, and it's complicated in ways they didn't anticipate. The world watched their fight for legitimacy, so they're not just local characters anymore, they're symbols. People have opinions about them, strong ones, without ever having met them. Some see them as heroes who challenged unjust systems. Others see them as animals who got away with something they shouldn't have. They can't go to the grocery store without being recognized, which Grizz initially loves until he realizes people want something from him, validation for their political stance, a photo to prove they met the famous bears, confirmation of whatever narrative they've constructed. The attention is exhausting in a different way than persecution was. Grizz handles the fame badly at first, which is ironic given how much he's always wanted to be liked. He says yes to everything: interviews, appearances, photo ops, trying to maintain the goodwill that helped them win. But he's performing version of himself that's more palatable, sanding down his rough edges and genuine quirks to be what people expect. Panda notices first, points out that Grizz is doing the people-pleasing thing he used to do at the carnival, and it sparks a fight because Grizz doesn't want to hear it. Eventually, Grizz burns out from trying to be everyone's feel-good bear story and has to learn to set boundaries. He starts saying no to requests that don't serve him or his brothers. He stops explaining himself to strangers. It's growth that looks like him becoming less friendly on the surface, but is actually him respecting himself more. Panda's confidence from his art show, success, and surviving the movie ordeal sticks in meaningful ways. He's still anxious, that's fundamental to who he is, but he's developed coping mechanisms that work. He channels stress into creative output, producing a whole series of pieces about displacement and belonging that resonate with people facing similar struggles. A gallery approaches him for a solo show, and this time, when imposter syndrome hits, he pushes through it. The show opens and it's genuinely successful, not viral, famous, but respected within the art world. Critics take him seriously. He sells enough pieces to have real income. More importantly, he's found a voice through his art that feels authentic, rather than desperate for validation. He's still on social media, but uses it as a tool rather than a lifeline, sharing his work without obsessing over engagement metrics. Ice Bear's walls soften incrementally, which is realistic for someone with his trauma history. He doesn't suddenly become chatty or emotionally demonstrative, but he starts sharing more with his brothers. When they ask about his day, he gives actual details instead of "Ice Bear's day was adequate." He initiates physical affection, occasionally a hand on Grizz's shoulder, sitting closer to Panda than strictly necessary, and lets himself receive comfort when he's struggling instead of always being the strong one. There's an episode where Ice Bear admits he had a nightmare, which is huge because it requires vulnerability about his mysterious past. Grizz and Panda don't push for details, just make it clear they're there if he wants to talk. The slow opening up demonstrates that healing isn't linear and trust deepens over time, even in established relationships. Chloe's preparing for college, and the transition is bittersweet for everyone. She's been their friend since she was a kid, and now she's heading toward adult independence. There are practical questions she'll be moving away, at least part-time, and won't be available for spontaneous hangouts. There are emotional questions. Their friendship has been a constant for years, and change is scary even when it's positive. Chloe's worried they'll forget about her or move on. The bears are worried she'll outgrow them. They have this conversation where everyone acknowledges the fear and then chooses to trust that distance won't erase what they've built. They make plans to stay connected, regular video calls, visits during breaks, continued investment in each other's lives. The episode where she actually leaves for school is genuinely tearful, but it ends with her video calling from her dorm room to show them around, including them in her new chapter rather than leaving them behind. Tabes gets promoted despite or maybe because of her rule breaking during the Bears' legal battle. Her superiors recognize that she has better community relationships and crisis management instincts than anyone else in the department. She's given more authority and resources, which she immediately uses to help other marginalized populations navigate bureaucratic systems. Her conspiracy theory hobby continues, but it's balanced with legitimate work that makes tangible differences. Martinez becomes her genuine partner in a buddy cop dynamic that works because they balance each other. Tabbs' intuition with Martinez's procedure, Tabbs' community trust with Martinez's institutional knowledge. They handle cases together and actually make a good team. Tabbs still hangs out with the bears regularly, but now she can do more to protect them within official channels rather than having to go rogue. Charlie's subplot about finding other Bigfoot community opens up his world significantly. He meets others like him, cryptids and creatures who've been hiding and surviving in the margins. Some are friendly, some are territorial, all are dealing with similar isolation. Charlie becomes something of a liaison, organizing meetups and support networks. He's building the community he always needed, and it doesn't replace his friendship with the bears, but it supplements it in healthy ways. There's an episode where he brings a few of his new friends to meet the bears, and it's this wonderful collision of weird where everyone's so outside normal that normal stops mattering. They have a potluck where Ice Bear cooks, and creatures that humans would freak out about are just hanging out, sharing food and stories. It's the found family energy expanded into found community. Nom Nom's redemption continues to be tested because growth isn't a destination, it's a process. His old habits surface sometimes. The instinct to calculate advantage, the urge to control his image, the fear that genuine connection makes him vulnerable. But now when he slips, he catches himself or his friends call him out, and he corrects course instead of doubling down. There's an episode where he has the opportunity to throw the bears under the bus for personal gain, an interview where the host is baiting him to distance himself from the bear situation, and Nom Nom just doesn't take the bait. He speaks positively about them, loses some followers who were never really on board with his growth, and accepts that cost. Afterward, he calls Grizz and says ice cream, which is their new code for hanging out, and Grizz is so proud he gets emotional. Nom Nom still thinks emotions are weird and uncomfortable, but he's learning to sit with them. Lucy makes her final appearance for real closure, running into them at an event where both their art is being shown. She's thriving, has a partner now, seems genuinely happy, is doing work she's proud of. She and Panda talk easily, no awkwardness or regret, just two artists who knew each other during formative periods and are glad the other is doing well. They take a photo together that Panda posts with a caption about growth and gratitude, and it's clear he means it. This interaction puts a final button on that relationship arc, showing that some people are meant to be in your life for a season rather than forever. And that's not a failure, it's just how human and bear relationships work sometimes. The final Baby Bears flashback is an emotional bookend that shows them arriving in the San Francisco area as young bears, finding the cave for the first time. We've seen their entire journey now, separated childhoods, finding each other, choosing to stay together, building a life, fighting for it, and earning the right to keep it. The flashback parallels present day where they're returning to the cave after the movie's events, seeing it with new appreciation. Young Grizz saying we could make this home echoes present-day Grizz saying we did make this home. The cyclical structure gives narrative satisfaction while acknowledging that some struggles persist. They'll always be fighting in some way to exist on their terms, but they're not doing it alone. The bear stack reaches peak perfection through practice and necessity. They can execute complex variations now with minimal communication, a look, a slight weight shift, and they're coordinating moves that should be impossible. The stack isn't just physical comedy anymore, it's a language, a demonstration of trust, a symbol of their unity. There's an episode where they teach Chloe and some friends the basic version, and watching others attempt what they make look effortless reminds everyone, including them, how much practice and trust went into perfecting it. The stack appears in the final episodes not as a gag, but as a genuine solution to problems and a visual shorthand for everything they are. Three individuals choosing to work as one, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses, reaching heights together they couldn't achieve alone. The last stretch of episodes is structured deliberately around callbacks and closure. The bears revisit the location from the pilot episode, that same burrito place where everything started, and it's both the same and completely different. The owner remembers them, is genuinely glad to see them. They order the same food, but the experience is richer because it's layered with history. That first visit, they were just trying to survive and maybe make a friend. Now they're known community members with established relationships. Grizz points out how far they've come and gets sentimental, and for once Panda doesn't deflect, he agrees. They really have built something. Ice Bear's quiet, but you can see in his expression that he's feeling it too. The episode uses this return to show growth without being heavy-handed about it. Each brother gets a solo episode in these final adventures that demonstrates their individual growth and independence. Grizz's episode has him handling a crisis alone, while his brothers are occupied elsewhere. He can't fall back on Ice Bear's competence or Panda's caution, he has to use his own judgment. And he does, successfully, making smart decisions that balance his optimism with learned realism. He still makes mistakes, but he adapts and solves the problem. When his brothers hear about it later, they're genuinely impressed and tell him so. Grizz realizes he's actually grown into the leader role instead of just performing it. Panda's solo episode involves him teaching an art class or workshop where he's the authority figure. He's initially terrified because his self-image is still anxious mess who barely has it together, but he finds that he actually knows things worth teaching. Students respond to his instruction and perspective. He helps someone break through a creative block using techniques he developed for himself. By the end, he's considering doing more teaching, recognizing that his struggles give him empathy and insight that make him valuable to others learning the same journey. It's a full-circle moment from the insecure bear who needed constant validation to someone who can provide guidance. Ice Bear's solo episode is action-heavy, calling back to his mysterious skills while showing how he's integrated his past into his present. Maybe there's a threat that requires his specific abilities, or someone from his old life needs help he's uniquely positioned to give. He handles it with characteristic competence, but there's a crucial difference. Afterward, he comes home and tells his brothers what happened. Not every detail, but enough. He doesn't compartmentalize his life into Ice Bear with brothers and Ice Bear alone anymore. They're integrated, which means he's integrated. His brothers thank him for trusting them with the information, and Ice Bear says, Ice Bear trusts family, making explicit what's been implicit. The reunion episode brings all three back together after their solo adventures, and there's this beautiful moment where they're clearly functioning fine independently, but are genuinely happier together. They've proven they could survive apart if necessary, which makes their choice to stay together more meaningful. They're not dependent, they're interdependent by choice. They celebrate being reunited with Ice Bear cooking a special meal, and the conversation flows easily, each of them sharing their solo experiences and the others listening with genuine interest. This is what healthy family looks like. Individuals with their own identities who enhance each other rather than disappearing into the group. Tabes' wedding happens, and it's this joyous celebration where the bears are invited guests, not oddities. They're part of Tabes' chosen family and are included naturally in this major life milestone. The wedding has all sorts of people from different parts of Tabes' life, and the bears fit right in. They participate in traditions, dance at the reception, which is chaotic and hilarious, but also sweet, and give a toast that's heartfelt and funny. Martinez is there looking happy for Tabes, and also slightly bemused by the whole found family circus, which is perfect. The wedding represents stability and continuation, life goes on, people grow and change and celebrate, and the bears are part of that normal fabric of living rather than separate from it. Chloe comes back for a visit, and she's noticeably more mature, but still fundamentally herself. College is challenging her and expanding her worldview, but she hasn't lost her core kindness or her love for her weird bear friends. She tells them about her experiences. They tell her what's been happening locally, and it's clear the relationship has evolved into something more equal. She's not the kid they're mentoring anymore. She's a young adult they respect. The goodbye this time is easier because they've proven the distance doesn't weaken the bond. She'll be back, and in the meantime, they're part of each other's lives through consistent communication. It's a realistic portrayal of how relationships adjust to life changes without ending. Charlie's found family theme gets explicitly celebrated when he organizes a gathering for everyone in his extended network, the bears, his new cryptid friends, random people they've all helped over the years. It's this potluck party in the woods where the theme is, we're all weird, and that's why we're family. There are speeches, stories, laughter, and this overwhelming sense of belonging. Charlie's come so far from the lonely Bigfoot hiding in the forest, and he's helped create community not just for himself, but for others who were isolated. The bears started as his family, and now they're part of a web of connection that's expanding. It's beautiful and messy and exactly what found family should be. Nom Nom reaches a turning point where he actively chooses peace over fame, An opportunity arises for him to return to his previous level of celebrity, a big contract, major exposure, everything his old self would have jumped at. But it would require him to be that shallow, calculating version of himself again. And he realizes he doesn't want it. He's happier now with fewer followers and real friends than he ever was with millions of followers and no one who actually knew him. He turns it down, and when the bears hear about it, Grizz literally hugs him. Nom Nom tolerates it with minimal complaining. Nom Nom starts mentoring young creators about the pitfalls of fame and the importance of maintaining authentic connections, which is perfect for him. He gets to be seen as an authority while actually helping people avoid his mistakes. The cave gets renovated in meaningful ways that reflect their growth. They make improvements that acknowledge this is their permanent home. Better insulation, a proper kitchen for Ice Bear, a studio space for Panda, organizational systems that Grizz actually maintains. They're investing in the space because they're not running anymore, not waiting for the next crisis. Chloe helps with design, Tabes pulls permits through official channels, Charlie and the cryptid crew provide labor. It becomes a community project, and when it's finished, the cave is still recognizably their weird underground home, but it's also more functional and comfortable. They throw a housewarming party, and the place is packed with everyone they've connected with over the years. The cave that started as just shelter has become the center of their universe. A final small-scale conflict arises, nothing world-ending. Just a personal, meaningful challenge that tests everything they've learned. Maybe it's an interpersonal issue between them that requires vulnerable communication, or a community problem that needs their specific collaborative solution. The conflict is resolved not through dramatic gestures, but through applying accumulated wisdom. Grizz's optimism tempered with realism, Panda's anxiety channeled into creative problem-solving, Ice Bear's competence softened with openness. They work together seamlessly, drawing on years of practice and trust. The resolution is satisfying because it shows how far they've come from the chaotic bears who couldn't execute a simple burrito run without incident. The resolution to stay in San Francisco together is reaffirmed, not as a default, but as an active choice. They could go elsewhere now. They've proven they can survive on the run, they've got connections in other places, but they choose to stay because this is home. Not just the cave, but the city, the community, the life they've built. There's an episode where they each articulate why they're staying. Grizz because he finally has the acceptance and friendship he's always wanted, Panda because he's found his voice and audience here, Ice Bear because Ice Bear is home, and he means all of it, the place, the people, the family. They choose San Francisco, and San Francisco, through their fight and their community support, has chosen them back. Chapter 12, 1,464 words. The final season energy is palpable. Every episode feels important, like the show knows it's building toward an ending and wants to honor everything it's been. There's no filler, just meaningful moments and earned payoffs. The series-long callbacks start appearing in density. That first burrito place, the original viral video, the jean jacket, Ice Bear's Miami references, Nom Nom's first appearance, Lucy's library, Charlie in the woods. All of it gets acknowledged, not heavy-handedly, but naturally, woven into new situations that demonstrate growth while honoring history. Guest stars return in waves, and it's structured so it doesn't feel forced. People appear because their story arcs are concluding or intersecting naturally with the bear's final chapter. The barista from the coffee shop, the food vendor from early seasons, random humans they help to remember them. Each cameo serves a purpose, showing the breadth of impact they've had, demonstrating that their community extends beyond main characters, proving that small kindnesses ripple outward. These brief appearances accumulate into a mosaic of the life they've built, showing that found family isn't just the core group, it's everyone who's chosen to include each other in their stories. The brothers have a conversation about their future that's both practical and philosophical. What do they want long-term? Grizz talks about continuing to help people, maybe formalizing some kind of community outreach that plays to his strengths. Panda wants to keep making art and maybe expand into teaching more regularly. Ice Bear's considering what to do with his cooking skills beyond casual catering, maybe a real restaurant, maybe a food truck that actually succeeds this time. They're planning individual futures that still intersect and support each other. The conversation reveals they've thought about this, that they're not just reacting to life anymore, but actively shaping it. Ice Bear's final secret gets revealed, and it's handled perfectly. Not a dramatic explosion of information, but a quiet moment where he chooses to share the last piece he's been holding back. Maybe it's about his training origins, or what happened to the people who raised him, or why he left his old life so completely. Whatever it is, it's significant but not sensationalized. His brothers listen without judgment, thank him for trusting them, and the moment passes without needing to be processed to death. The revelation doesn't change who Ice Bear is. They already know him, it just completes their understanding. The fact that he can share it shows how safe he feels, which is the real payoff. Grizz has a growth moment that shows his optimism evolving into wisdom. Someone comes to him with a problem, and Grizz's first instinct is to promise he'll fix it, but he stops himself. Instead, he offers realistic support. "I can't fix this for you, but I can help you figure out what you need." It's a small thing, but it represents massive growth. He's learned that being helpful doesn't mean being everyone's savior, that sometimes the most loving thing is empowering others rather than rescuing them. His brothers notice and are proud, and Grizz admits it's hard to fight his instinct to make everything okay for everyone. But he's learning that's not actually his job. Panda's art career takes off in a sustainable way. He's not viral, famous, he's professionally respected, which turns out to be more valuable. He has regular gallery representation, collectors who follow his work, students who want to learn from him. His art has matured thematically, exploring identity and belonging, and found family with depth that resonates. There's a final piece he creates specifically about his brothers, and it's displayed prominently in his final show of the series. The piece visually represents their journey, the stack, the cave, moments of chaos and peace, all integrated into something beautiful and complex. His brothers come to the show and stand in front of it, and you can see them recognizing themselves in his artistic translation of their shared life. The bear stack becomes emotionally weighted with symbolism in these final episodes. It's not just a physical feat anymore, it's a metaphor for everything they are. When they stack now, it's with full awareness of what it represents: trust, interdependence, choosing each other, reaching together toward things they couldn't achieve alone. There's a moment in the final episode where they need to do the stack one last time for some crucial purpose, and the camera lingers on each of them taking their position. Grizz on the bottom, solid foundation, learned stability; Panda in the middle, connector, bridging, optimism, and competence. Ice Bear on top, skilled and trusted, comfortable being elevated by his family. They execute it perfectly, and it's both triumphant and bittersweet, because you know this is the last time we'll see it. The final adventure mirrors the pilot structurally, bringing everything full circle. They're going for burritos simple, every day, the same goal they had in episode 1. But this time, they know the city, they know themselves, they know each other in ways that baby bears on a train couldn't imagine. The journey to get the burritos involves callbacks to various past adventures. They see Nom Nom and stop to chat like friends. They wave at Tabes, who's on patrol. They dodge a minor crisis with competence instead of chaos. Everything that would have been a whole episode's worth of disaster in Season 1 is now handled in minutes because they've learned and grown. They get the burritos from that same first vendor who remembers them and head home. The ending is deliberately open-ended but satisfying. The bears are sitting in their renovated cave, eating burritos, talking about their day and their plans. Nothing's resolved in the sense that life isn't resolved. They'll keep having adventures, facing challenges, growing and changing. But the core is solid. They have each other, they have their home, they have community. The cave home is established permanently through their legal victory and their continuous choice to stay. The final shot is them sitting together, maybe doing the bear stack one last time just because they can, and the camera pulls back to show the cave in its entirety, this weird, impossible home that represents everything they've built. The screen fades not on an ending but on continuation. This is their life. It's messy and beautiful and hard and worth fighting for, and they're living it together. The final freeze frame is iconic and perfect. The three of them in stack formation, silhouetted against the cave entrance with the city visible beyond. It's the visual encapsulation of the entire series. Three bears who don't belong according to society's rules, who built family from nothing, who fought for the right to exist together, who created home through sheer, stubborn love. The stack is perfect. They're smiling. The image holds just long enough to imprint in memory, and then the series ends. By now you've seen the entire journey from three bears in a cave trying to figure out burritos to a family that fought the system and won the right to stay together. Drop a comment if you're still here. What's been your favorite moment from the series? And that's the entire story of We Bare Bears, from those first chaotic days trying to fit into San Francisco to becoming permanent parts of the community they chose. Three brothers who found each other when they had nothing, built a life together through every disaster and triumph, and proved that family isn't about where you come from, it's about who you choose and who chooses you back. That food truck chaos from the beginning? Just another Tuesday in their wild, beautiful, impossible life. If you made it this far, thanks for going on this journey through the entire series with me. It's been a ride through every season, every friendship, every moment that made these bears who they are.